Some towns in the UK look perfect until you try living there. You see the photos first: stone houses, quiet streets, green hills, water nearby. The kind of place people share online with captions like "This is the dream," and for a moment you believe it. You picture slower mornings, cleaner air, friendly neighbours, and a calmer life. But here's what no one tells you. Some of the most beautiful towns in the UK are also some of the hardest places to actually live in. Too expensive, too isolated, too crowded with visitors, or too frozen in time to adapt to real life. And that's where this video starts. Because beauty is easy to sell, living somewhere long-term is not. This video isn't about day trips or weekend escapes. It's not about where to take nice photos or where to retire with no responsibilities. This is about the most beautiful towns to live in, meaning places where people wake up every day, work, raise families, deal with costs, weather, neighbours, and the reality behind the view. Some of these towns really do live up to the dream. Others look perfect until you move in. And the difference between the two is what we're here to unpack. The core problem is simple but uncomfortable: beauty doesn't equal quality of life. In fact, sometimes it works against it. In the UK especially, beautiful towns often come with strict planning rules, limited housing, high prices, and heavy tourist pressure. The very things that make them beautiful also make them fragile. Hard to change, hard to grow, hard to afford. That creates a strange situation where towns are protected for how they look, but not always for how people actually live. Many people move to beautiful towns chasing a feeling: peace, calm, charm. But they don't always think about practical things until it's too late. Where are the jobs? How long does it take to get healthcare? What happens in winter? Who actually lives here year-round? And once you realize the answers, leaving isn't always easy. Another challenge is expectation. Beautiful towns attract people with money, second homes, and visitors. That pushes prices up fast. Locals get priced out. Young people leave. Communities age. Shops turn into gift stores. Town centres become seasonal. The place still looks beautiful, but the life drains out quietly. So the real challenge of this video is not ranking beauty. It's understanding which towns balance beauty with real life, and which ones struggle under the weight of their own image. Because living somewhere beautiful should not feel like surviving it. That's why we need to reset what beautiful to live in actually means. It's not just scenery. A town can be stunning and still feel lonely. It can be historic and still feel stuck. It can be peaceful and still feel cut off. Real beauty, when you live somewhere, shows up in small things. Can you walk to shops that stay open year-round? Is there life on the streets when tourists leave? Do people know each other, not just tolerate each other? Does the town still change, or is it locked in the past? Access matters more than views. Community matters more than architecture. Balance matters more than perfection. Some towns are visually beautiful but emotionally cold. Others are less dramatic but feel alive, supportive, and human. That difference becomes obvious only after months or years, not during a visit. Another thing people forget is weather and seasonality. A town that looks magical in summer can feel harsh in winter. Darkness, rain, wind, isolation. If transport is poor or services are thin, beauty fades quickly. And then there's money. Many beautiful UK towns are expensive not because they're thriving, but because supply is locked. Heritage rules, green belts, and planning restrictions limit housing. Demand keeps rising. Prices follow. Locals rent longer, commute further, or leave entirely. So you end up with towns that look full but feel empty. Lights off half the year, streets busy only in peak season. Beauty preserved, life diluted. This video doesn't ignore that. It leans into it. Because the most beautiful towns to live in aren't always the most famous ones. Sometimes they're slightly overlooked. Less photographed, less hyped, but they work better day to day. That's the lens we're using here. As we go through this list, you'll notice a pattern. The lower towns are beautiful, but with clear compromises. As we move up, the balance improves. Beauty stays, but so does community, access, and livability. By the time we reach the top, the town isn't just pretty, it functions. And that's the key difference. So if you're watching this because you're dreaming about moving, or just curious about where real life and beauty overlap in the UK, pay attention to the details. The quiet downsides matter as much as the views, because the most beautiful town to live in isn't the one that looks best online, it's the one that still feels like home after the photos stop. Now let's start the list. Hebden Bridge often surprises people. Tucked into a steep valley in the Pennines, it doesn't look flashy at first glance. But once you spend time there, the beauty grows on you. Stone houses climb the hillsides, canals cut quietly through town, and green hills wrap around everything. People move here for the balance. You get nature without being completely cut off. Manchester and Leeds are reachable. There's a strong creative community, independent shops, music venues, and a feeling that people actually talk to each other. Hebden Bridge feels alive. But the soft downside starts with geography. That same valley setting that makes it beautiful also makes it vulnerable. Flooding has been a serious issue over the years, and locals live with that risk constantly. Housing stock is limited, prices have risen, and not everyone who loves the town can afford to stay. It's beautiful, welcoming, and real, but fragile. Ludlow looks like a postcard from almost any angle. Medieval streets, a castle right in the centre, and rolling countryside in every direction. It's often praised for food, markets, and quality of life. And for many people, it lives up to the reputation. The town has a strong local economy built around food, tourism, and small businesses. There's pride here, a sense of place. People know where they are and why they're there. But Ludlow also shows an early version of a problem you'll see again later in the list. It's very popular with retirees and visitors. That's not bad on its own, but it does change the town. Younger people sometimes struggle to find work that isn't seasonal. House prices are high compared to local wages. And parts of the town feel quieter than you'd expect for a place that looks so lively. Ludlow is beautiful to live in, as long as your life fits the town, not the other way around. Stamford is one of those towns people fall in love with almost instantly. Stone buildings everywhere, clean streets, historic character without feeling run down. It's often described as one of the best preserved stone towns in England. Living here feels orderly and calm. Stamford benefits from good transport links, especially rail connections to bigger cities. That makes it attractive to commuters who want beauty without total isolation. Schools are well regarded. The town centre is compact and walkable. But the soft issue here is subtle. Stamford can feel conservative, not politically, socially. Change comes slowly. New ideas take time to land. For some people, that stability feels comforting. For others, it feels limiting. It's a beautiful town that values how things have always been done. Whether that's a positive or a negative depends on the kind of life you want. Totnes is known for being different, and it leans into that identity. Set above the River Dart, surrounded by rolling countryside, it has a relaxed, almost bohemian feel. Independent shops, alternative lifestyles, strong environmental values. People move here because they want something slower and more intentional. The town has a strong sense of community. Local food matters. Small businesses matter. People talk about quality of life, not just cost of living, but Totnes also has clear limits. Jobs are limited. Wages are often low. Housing is expensive for what you get, and if you don't fit into the local culture, it can feel harder to connect. The openness that attracts some people can feel closed to others. Totnes is beautiful, but it expects you to buy into its way of life. Kirkby Lonsdale sits on the edge of the Lake District and Yorkshire Dales, and it benefits from both. Stone buildings, river views, and access to some of the best countryside in England. On paper, it sounds perfect. The town is small but lively. Pubs, cafes, and local shops keep it feeling active. People who live here often talk about knowing their neighbours and feeling safe, but tourism shapes life here more than many realise. Weekends and summers are busy, very busy. Streets fill up, parking becomes a problem. Some services cater more to visitors than locals, and like many beautiful rural towns, housing is expensive and limited. Kirkby Lonsdale is stunning, but it reminds you early on that beauty attracts crowds. Harrogate is the kind of town that makes people say, "Okay, I get it." Clean streets, proper parks, beautiful old buildings, and that calm, everything works feeling. It's also one of those places that keeps showing up in happiness rankings, including Rightmove's Happy at Home Index, where Harrogate has been named the happiest place to live in the UK more than once. But here's the trade-off that kicks off this escalation phase: Harrogate isn't a secret anymore. When a town gets a strong reputation for quality of life, prices rise, demand rises, and the pressure slowly creeps in. That can mean higher housing costs, more competition for good rentals, and a feeling that you need a decent income to fully enjoy what the town offers. Harrogate is beautiful to live in, but it's not cheap beautiful. It's you'll pay for the calm beautiful. Falmouth is coastal beauty that still feels like a real working town. It's got beaches, harbours, and that sea air feeling that changes your mood the second you step outside. What makes Falmouth stand out compared to some other Cornwall hotspots is that it's not just a postcard town, it has a strong year-round identity with amenities, a university, and a lively cultural scene. It also gets named in Best Places to Live style lists, which tells you this isn't just about visiting. People actually move here for lifestyle, but now the trade-offs start to bite. Falmouth is popular, and popularity brings pressure, more visitors, busier summers, and a housing market that can feel like it's pulled in two directions, locals trying to live normally, and outsiders treating homes like lifestyle purchases. You can love the sea, love the town, love the vibe, and still feel priced out or squeezed by seasonal crowds. It's beautiful. It's livable. But it's not always calm. St Andrews is almost unfairly pretty. Sea views, historic streets, and a vibe that's half old Scotland and half student energy. The town is famous worldwide, but when you live there, the beauty isn't just one landmark, it's the whole setting. And the town's identity is heavily shaped by the University of St Andrews, founded in 1413, which makes it the oldest university in Scotland. This town has a special kind of beauty because it feels both calm and alive at the same time. You can walk almost everywhere. The coast is right there. And the town has that clean, bright feeling some seaside places don't. Now the trade-offs. St Andrews is small, very small. That means housing can be limited, and demand can be intense because students, staff, and long-term residents are all competing in the same tight space. And because it's famous, you don't just live in St Andrews, you live in a place people travel to on purpose. That means summer crowds, busy weekends, and a town that sometimes feels like it's always being watched by visitors. It's stunning, it's walkable, but it can feel crowded for its size. Stratford-upon-Avon is one of those towns where beauty comes from story. The river, the old streets, the bridges, the theatres, it all feels like history you can live inside. And the biggest reason Stratford is known worldwide is simple, it's Shakespeare's birthplace. What makes Stratford beautiful to live in isn't just the look of the town, it's the atmosphere. There's always culture, always something going on. The town centre is walkable, and the River Avon gives the place a calm rhythm. But here's the escalation trade-off, tourism. In a town like this, visitors aren't a side effect, they're a core part of the economy. That means busy peak seasons, packed weekends, and a town centre that can feel like it belongs to tourists more than locals at certain times. If you live here, you learn which streets to avoid on Saturdays. You learn when to shop. You learn how to share your own home with other people's bucket lists. Stratford is beautiful, but it doesn't always feel like it's yours. Keswick is where the list starts to feel like a dream town. It sits right in the Lake District with mountains around it and Derwent Water basically on its doorstep. You're not just near nature, you're surrounded by it. Official guides for the Lake District talk about Derwent Water being close to Keswick and highlight the classic viewpoints and walks that make the area so famous. This is the kind of place where a normal Tuesday can look like a holiday. Walks, lakeside views, hills in every direction. That's not marketing, that's daily life if you live there. But now the trade-offs get real. Keswick is beautiful in a way that attracts everyone, hikers, tourists, day trippers, families, retirees, photographers, influencers, all at once. That means crowded seasons, traffic, parking problems, and a local economy shaped heavily by visitors. And then there's the bigger issue, living in a very scenic place often means limited housing, and limited housing often means higher costs and more competition. Plus, some people love being surrounded by mountains, until winter hits and the days feel short, wet, and quiet. Keswick isn't hard living, but it can be isolating if you're used to city life. It's one of the most beautiful towns in the UK to live in, but it asks you to accept the full package, not just the views. At this point in the list, we've moved past towns that are simply nice. These are places people actively dream about. Places that show up on calendars, screensavers, and travel lists all over the world. And that's exactly where the problem starts. Because when a town becomes too beautiful, living there stops being simple. Town number 5, Burton on the Water, Gloucestershire. Button on the water looks unreal. Low stone bridges crossing a clear river. Honey-coloured cottages. No modern buildings breaking the spell. It's often called the Venice of the Cotswolds, and that nickname alone tells you everything you need to know. This is one of the most photographed villages in England. And that's the compromise. Button on the water is stunning, but it's also overwhelmed. On busy days, the number of visitors can massively outnumber the people who actually live there. Streets clog up. Cars crawl. Quiet disappears. What looks peaceful online can feel chaotic in real life. For residents, daily life means planning around visitors, avoiding certain times, avoiding certain paths, watching your hometown turn into a backdrop for other people's holidays. Housing is extremely limited and very expensive. Many properties are second homes or holiday lets. That pushes prices far beyond what local wages can support. Younger people struggle to stay. Community becomes thinner. Button on the water is beautiful, almost perfectly so, but it often feels like a place preserved for viewing, not living. Bath is beauty on a grand scale. Roman history. Georgian architecture. Sweeping crescents. A city that feels carefully designed rather than accidentally grown. Living in Bath feels like living inside a museum that still functions. And for many people, that's the appeal. Bath has culture, shops, good transport, and access to countryside. It's one of the rare places that manages to feel historic and lively at the same time. There's always something happening. But here's the sharp compromise. Bath is expensive, very expensive. Housing costs are high because development is tightly controlled. Heritage protection keeps the city beautiful, but it also limits supply. Demand stays high. Prices rise. Renting can feel competitive and stressful. Buying can feel impossible unless you already have money. Tourism adds another layer. Bath isn't just lived in, it's visited constantly. That means busy streets, packed weekends, and a city centre that sometimes feels like it's performing. For residents, beauty comes with pressure. You're sharing your home with millions of visitors every year. And while Bath offers a high quality of life, it also quietly filters who can afford to stay long term. St. Ives' coastal beauty at its most dramatic. Clear water. Sandy beaches, light that artists have chased for generations. When the sun hits right, it doesn't feel real. People don't just like St. Ives. They fall in love with it. And that's where things get uncomfortable. St. Ives has been hit harder than almost any UK town by the second home problem. A huge portion of properties are owned by people who don't live there full time. In winter, parts of the town go dark. Shops close early. Streets empty out. For locals, living in St. Ives means competing with wealth that doesn't rely on local jobs. House prices are far above local wages. Rentals are scarce. Many families are forced to move inland, away from the place they grew up. Tourism dominates daily life. Summers are busy to the point of exhaustion. Roads clog. Beaches fill. The town's beauty becomes its burden. St. Ives is stunning, but living there requires compromise, patience, and often sacrifice. It's a place people dream about, and locals quietly struggle to hold on to. Oxford doesn't need an introduction. It's one of the most recognizable cities in the world. Historic colleges. Green spaces. Rivers. A sense of intellectual weight that gives the place a unique atmosphere. Living in Oxford feels special. There's energy here. Youth. Ideas. Culture. You can walk through centuries of history on your way to work. But Oxford's beauty comes with some of the sharpest compromises on this list. Housing is extremely expensive and highly competitive. Demand is relentless, driven by the university, hospitals, research centres, and global reputation. Many people who work in Oxford can't afford to live in Oxford. Traffic is heavy. Parking is limited. Planning restrictions keep the city beautiful, but they also trap it. Expansion is hard. Pressure builds. There's also a social divide. Oxford can feel split between those connected to the university and those who aren't. Between long-term residents and temporary populations. Between wealth and struggle. Oxford is beautiful to live in, but only if you can get in and stay in. For many, it becomes a place they orbit, not inhabit. Edinburgh sits at the top of this list because no other place in the UK combines beauty, history, daily life, and pressure quite like it does. This is a city where beauty isn't tucked away in one corner. It's everywhere. You see it in the skyline dominated by Edinburgh Castle. You feel it walking down the Royal Mile. You notice it in the sudden green spaces that open up between stone buildings. Even ordinary neighbourhoods carry a sense of weight and history. Living in Edinburgh feels significant. It's not just pretty, it has presence. You get culture without trying. Festivals that take over the city every year. Museums that don't feel dusty. Streets that feel alive even on quiet days. You can live a modern life while being surrounded by centuries of history, and somehow it works. That's why so many people dream about moving here. And that's exactly why living here is complicated. Edinburgh's beauty attracts everyone at once. Students, professionals, tourists, investors, second home buyers, short-term lets. The demand never stops. And the city isn't built to expand easily. Historic protections preserve the look, but they also lock supply. The result is pressure everywhere. Housing is expensive and competitive. Renting can feel like a race. Buying feels out of reach for many people who actually work in the city. Entire neighborhoods feel half lived in because short-term stays replace long-term homes. During festival season, the city transforms. Streets fill, prices jump, normal routines disappear. For some residents, it's exciting. For others, it's exhausting. You don't just live in Edinburgh, you share it constantly. There's also a social divide that creeps in quietly. Long-time residents watch the city change around them. Local shops turn into visitor-focused businesses. Some areas feel less like communities and more like stages. And yet, people stay. They stay because Edinburgh still functions. Public transport works. Jobs exist. Schools, hospitals, and services are there. The city hasn't hollowed out the way some beautiful places have. It's under pressure, but it's alive. That's why Edinburgh earns the top spot. It represents the ultimate balance and the ultimate tension. You get unmatched beauty in daily life. You get opportunity. You get culture. You get history you can touch, but you also get cost, crowds, and competition. Edinburgh is the climax of this list because it shows the full truth about living somewhere beautiful in the UK. The more complete the beauty, the higher the price, not just in money, but in patience, compromise, and effort. It's not perfect. It's not easy. But for many people, it's still worth it. And that's the real measure of beauty when it comes to living somewhere. Not how good it looks in photos, but how much you're willing to give up to stay. When you step back from the list and look at all these towns together, something bigger starts to emerge. This isn't just a story about pretty places. It's a story about how Britain has been shaped, protected, restricted, and divided over time, and how those decisions affect who gets to live where. Many of the most beautiful towns in the UK didn't become beautiful by accident. Their look is the result of centuries of history, careful planning, and in many cases, strict control. Old buildings were preserved. Town centres were protected. Development was limited. Green belts were drawn. Heritage laws were enforced. All of that worked. These places stayed beautiful, but there's a political and historical cost to that success. When you freeze a town in time, you also limit its future. Housing can't grow easily. Infrastructure struggles to expand. Jobs don't always keep pace with costs. Over time, demand rises faster than supply, and prices climb. Beauty becomes exclusive. That's why so many of these towns feel under pressure. They're not failing, they're trapped by their own success. Historically, Britain has placed huge value on preservation. That instinct comes from real losses. Cities bombed during war. Countryside swallowed by industry. Communities erased by rapid development. Protecting beautiful towns became a way to protect identity. But protection without balance creates inequality. Who gets to live in beauty? Who gets pushed out? Who commutes in? Who owns but doesn't stay? In many of these towns, the answer has slowly shifted away from locals. Second homes increase. Short-term lets replace long-term rentals. Young people leave. Services adjust to visitors rather than residents. The town still looks alive, but daily life becomes harder. This isn't because people don't care. It's because systems reward appearance more than function. Politically, local councils are often stuck. They're under pressure to preserve character, but also to provide housing, to attract visitors, but also to support communities, to protect heritage, but also allow growth. Those goals often conflict. National policy plays a role too. Housing shortages push people toward smaller towns. Wealth concentrates in certain regions. Investment flows unevenly. Beautiful towns become pressure points for bigger problems that weren't created there. And yet, despite all of this, people still want to live in these places. That matters. It tells us that beauty isn't superficial. It affects mental health, identity, and how people experience daily life. Green spaces, walkable streets, historic character, these things make people feel grounded. They matter more than spreadsheets acknowledge. But beauty alone isn't enough. A town isn't truly beautiful if the people who keep it running can't afford to live there. It isn't beautiful if it empties out half the year. It isn't beautiful if community life slowly fades behind closed doors. The towns at the top of this list show us both sides of the story. Places like Edinburgh prove that beauty and function can coexist, but only with constant tension, compromise, and pressure. Others show what happens when beauty wins completely and life struggles to keep up. So what's the takeaway? Living somewhere beautiful in the UK is no longer just about taste or preference. It's about access, timing, money, flexibility, and sometimes luck. The most beautiful towns to live in aren't necessarily the most famous ones. They're the places that still allow ordinary life to happen alongside beauty. Where teachers, nurses, shop workers, and young families still have a place. Where the town isn't just preserved, it's lived in, and those places are becoming harder to find. This list isn't meant to tell you where to move. It's meant to show you how complex the idea of beautiful living really is in modern Britain. Behind every perfect view is a set of choices, policies, and trade-offs that shape who belongs there. Beauty is powerful. But it always comes with a price. The question isn't whether a town is beautiful. The question is whether it's beautiful for the people who call it home. And that's a conversation Britain will keep having every time another town becomes too perfect to live in.